Not a lot to like about the concussion that we saw yet again for Tua Tagovailoa, who went into the fencing position that we've seen multiple times now from him. The brutal reality of the sport is what we saw from Tua play out after about a month and a half ago signing a 4-year, $212 million contract extension. He's now out indefinitely, where many are calling for his retirement based on what they've seen recently. Last night comes after a season ago where he made it through the season. 2022, of course, is when they changed the concussion policy. And now everyone's concerned about the big picture, Tua's health. Here's Mike McDaniel.
I think it would be so wrong of me to even sniff that subject, and it's more in line of actually caring about the human being, and that's something that entirely you're talking about his career, right? His career is his, and that's something that I think I just really, really, really wish. I totally understand it, and it's not misplaced. I totally get how that's where people want to go to. I just wish that people would for a second hear what I'm saying, that bringing up his future is not in the best interest of him. So, I'm going to plead with everybody that, does genuinely care, that should be the last thing on your mind, because you don't, what do you think that's, if I would answer that question, I'd be like, all right, this is my thoughts on his career. And he read it. If he agreed with it or he disagreed with it, either way, I've just made him worse. So I'm not taking this opportunity to just I don't think it's appropriate, simply because of my care and regard. And I don't think those types of conversations, when you're talking about somebody's career, I think it probably is only fair that their career should be decided by them.
There's his head coach, who's about the only person that doesn't have an opinion on this across the league. Immediately on Amazon last night on Thursday Night Football postgame, players are calling for it. You've got coaches around the league, including Antonio Pierce of the Raiders. Here he is when asked about what Tua should do.
I'll be honest, I'll just tell him to retire. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Play the game. I haven't witnessed anything like I've seen that's happened to him 3 times. Scary. You can see right away the players' faces on the field. You can see the sense of urgency from everybody to get Tua help. I just think at some point, he's going to live longer and he's going to play football. Take care of your family.
And one more reaction. Manti Te'o earlier today on Good Morning Football with his emotional response.
Manti, I have to look to you, and the three of us are watching the game, and we have our own relationship as spectators with Tua, but as someone who personally knows him and has a connection with him, first of all, I'm really sorry that you have to go through this. It's got to be difficult for you, but as a friend and as a family connection to Tua, how are you feeling this morning in terms of, man, I want him to just walk away. I want him to stay through this. Like, where are you with that? Because none of us really know where to go, but none of us have your connection to him.
Yeah. I'll say this, Kyle. After he suffered the one against the Bengals, I wanted him to walk. That when I saw him have to be carted off the field,
yeah,
I wanted him to walk. Like, that was
Yep.
That was hard, bro.
Yeah.
Like, what people have to understand is this is just a game, and then there's life. And when you watch a young man that you've known since you was a little boy go out there, is it hard for me? Yeah, but I can't imagine how it is for Uncle Nalu and Auntie Diane to watch their son again go down. And, Calais mentioned it was so good to watch him stand up. For somebody that's been in that situation who have had a concussion, I don't even know if Tua's there as he's walking off the field. Like, there's been clips of me after concussions getting off the ground and walking off the stadium, walking into the locker room. I don't remember those walks. Yep. It's like I wake up. I remember when it was a playoff game against the Broncos, I got knocked out the second quarter of that game. I got up. The camera footage shows me walking to the locker room. Kyle, I didn't wake up. I didn't come to until the fourth quarter. It was 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and I was sitting in the locker room trying to figure out why am I in Denver. And so to see my brother Tua go down like that, it really just makes me, I want the best for Tua, the man, the father. He's a father of two now. I want him to be able, not today, but 10, 15, 20 years down the line, to be able to raise his children, to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle. That's what I want for Tua. That's true joy. And I know the competitor in Tua, everybody, like how Jamie talked about, slide Tua. Like, I was saying the same thing, bro, just slide. But knowing the competitor in him, he wants to win. He has a whole new helmet just to protect him. He lost weight just to protect himself. And to see him go down like that, I don't mean to get emotional on the show, but it was big for a family member to watch him go through that again. And I'm just so grateful that the NFL community has rallied around Tua. I just hope for my little brother that he sees, like, and he understands, knowing that his makeup, he understands what's important in life. And I just hope that he makes the right decision. Like Kyle, like, I'm not going to make that decision for you. I'm not saying to step away from the game. As a brother, I just want the best for you, and whatever that looks like for Tua and the Tagovailoa family, that's what I want for him.
Chad, this is the most honest, emotional, direct response I've ever seen from a player receiving and having a concussion. And it comes from the quarterback position. And it's not just former players, it's current players, coaches. And Tua's even admitted in 2022, after the season, he thought about retirement. He considered retirement. And I would think he's having to do that again. But here's the other part of this. It was Damar Hamlin
that made the tackle.
Yes. And, I mean, he came back and played, right? It's Tua's call. And I look at this and go, man, there's no equipment that's going to prevent this. The visual aspect of this has been brutal. They've changed policy based on the way his concussions were handled in 2022. But if he comes back and plays, what's the sentiment then? After he's got to be hearing all of the discussion of, yeah, please retire. And it comes a month and a half after he signed this big deal, and there's investment from the Miami Dolphins with him. Pressure on both sides for the quarterback. But as, you know, as just an individual, as a long-term play, you and I have both seen the effects of concussions post-career from friends of ours, guys we've known very well, and those that we've met in passing through former players and coaches that we've known well. I just hope the best for him, and I hope he makes the right call based on, you know, the fact that it's not like the concussions are going away if he comes back to play and actually has the right mindset and the right clearance through a neurologist.
There are plenty of examples of issues where the fan's opinion certainly matters in all sports. When it comes to players and coaches too, and stadium relations, there's a lot of different things, television broadcast, where I think the fan is oftentimes neglected with their opinion, and what the fan thinks doesn't really matter, and I think it should matter more. This is a situation where I believe the NFL fans' opinion should matter less. I don't care what any fan, what they think about Tua Tagovailoa and whether or not he should retire in this instance. So any fan that watched that game, you're entitled to an opinion like everyone is. I don't think that should factor in at all. But I will take credence in the opinions I've seen from former players who have suffered with concussion issues, like Hutton illustrated. Friends of Tua Tagovailoa, like Amanti Teo, who we just heard from. Doctors' opinion, we'll talk to one in Dr. David Chow coming up a little bit later in the show. And I also side with Mike McDaniel here in that it is very difficult for anyone, even the people I just laid out, to tell someone it's time to retire. If they don't have to medically retire, if they feel like they can recover from something and continue to play the game that they love and make a lot of money doing it, if that's what they want to do, it's tough to just say, man, you should retire. Your career is over. It's time to hang up the cleats. You shouldn't be out there anymore. So this is a difficult thing from all sides. But in a lot of instances, I think the fans are underheard from people. They don't need to be heard in this thing. And I'm not saying that Tua Tagovailoa is going to take the advice of a bunch of fans on what he should do next with his career after his third concussion, but I don't care at all what any fan thinks about this. I do care what people who have suffered from concussions think, that played the game, those closest to him, family and friends, and the medical community. I care what they think about it. The rest is up to Tua, and I think Mike McDaniel Hutt made a lot of good points about that it doesn't serve anyone well, whether he agrees with it or disagrees with it. If he goes in and says, I think you should retire, or someone says that, even if he disagrees with that, it's not serving Tua well in this moment, especially in the immediate aftermath of that injury. And it is crazy to think about medical history of the NFL and some of the biggest moments. Manti Te'o talked about that moment against Cincinnati with Tua.
Yep.
But you look at Hamlin and him and the intersection of that hit and the third concussion. It's crazy to play the percentage game of those two guys being involved in that moment.
Yep. And I mean, Tua's not the only current player with multiple concussions like this. You know, one of them is a Titans tight end in Josh Wiley, who has decided he's going to wear the Guardian cap. And he's been doing that throughout the preseason because he's mandated to. But he's wearing this during the regular season. He's the only player on the team doing it. So Tua may not retire, but to me, if safety matters, and by the way, starting in 2022, they started mandating this for certain positions. You have to wear the Guardian cap in practice and any padded practice during the regular season, training camp, all of that. That was for all linemen, tight ends, and linebackers. Then they went a step further the following year, and they made all running backs and fullbacks wear them. This past training camp, all wide receivers and defensive backs had to wear them during practice and training camp. Any padded practice throughout the regular season. Quarterbacks aren't on that list. And I think if you're going to institute a policy moving forward, because they've done this in the past and after a Tua incident, and it's no fault of him, but he's, in the spotlight here as the quarterback. I think if he's back on the field, he's got to wear that. Institute some type of policy, multiple concussions, coming off of two of them, whatever it might be. There's got to be something more than what they're doing in this case. In the past, the player wouldn't protect himself from the immediate future. Players would recognize the concussion protocol years ago, where you just memorize this quick little verbal test and you're back on the field. And now those same players are saying Tua needs to retire. I hope he retires. You have guys in the locker room that are much more careful and cautious about concussions. The tide has turned on this, and I realize that the Guardian cap is ugly, but they're wearing them in practice, mandated by the NFL. And while there's no true piece of equipment that's going to prevent this head trauma, Tua's a prime example of people calling for him not to play. But if he does, he's got the new helmet. Still had what we saw last night. I look at it, any player returning from a concussion needs to wear this, at least for a time period, once you clear the current protocol, which is with the independent neurologist. It was ugly. And we're going to see it again if he comes back at some point. That's the harsh reality of it. And he's not the only player currently in the league that's gone through this. Josh Wiley said this, Chad, about why he's wearing the Guardian cap in the games. To be honest with you, I don't really care how it looks, as long as it keeps you safe. It's a decision. As I was coming back from the concussion, I got a new helmet as well, and I just think the extra protection, if they're allowing it, I think it's great. Why not? That's kind of what I was asking myself. Why not do it? I mean, that for the NFL, I don't know why you wouldn't make quarterbacks do the same thing.
Yeah, if it's a vanity thing, it doesn't look right, it looks dumb, then that's not a good enough reason to do it, to Josh Wiley's point. So I like that he's taking that approach, especially given his history. Hutton, I like the idea of making it mandatory based on 2 diagnosed concussions or 3 or whatever the number is.
Yeah,
probably
protocol.
2, and then you try to prevent the 3rd one that Tua just took last night. I also think the NFL is pretty good about capitalizing on a moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying capitalizing is probably the right term, but acting in a moment, they're pretty good about that. I think this is going to prompt some action. So it could be what you're talking about, mandatory guardian cap for Tua or other players that have a 2nd or 3rd concussion. But I don't know that I just see the NFL trotting Tua back out in 2 or 3 weeks after a game off with nothing else changing, given how much talk this moment where everybody saw him in the fencing position and everything else that went with it.
Again.
That scary moment again.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's just going to be, well, here's Tua starting the game here in a week and a half, 2 weeks for the Miami Dolphins. It feels like this will prompt some action from the NFL in some way. Or, sadly, it also feels like we may have watched Tua play in the NFL for the last time.
Yeah.
If he takes
Maybe.
the advice of a lot of former players and a friend and family member, basically, like Manti Te'o, talking about the close relationship with Tua.
Yeah, and just final thought. This is a quarterback that's going through this. The player that's protected the most on the field is the one we're seeing play out the way it is. Just I hope everything with him currently is okay.
And the rules do protect the quarterback in a lot of ways, and Tua had been better about protecting himself while running. This was a running play where he's trying to pick up a 4th down.
He took sliding lessons.
And you cannot, if he would have slid on a 4th down.
I know, man.
Down 21 points and not gotten I totally understand it. That's exactly what a fan would want. Giving up your body to make sure you get the 1st down and not sliding before you get to it. If you are a competitor, you're not thinking about getting your 3rd concussion in that moment. So I'm not blaming Tua for any of that, but this was also not some situation where he's hanging out in the pocket and gets rocked in a blindside hit, helmet to helmet, and he's knocked unconscious for a 3rd time. This was Tua Tagovailoa taking the game in his own hands in a critical moment, trying to pick up a 1st down, being a competitor, being a runner of the football in that moment, and he took a hit from Damar Hamlin, and we saw the results of it.
Yeah, and that's football.
Yes.
That's the harsh reality there, too. Again, he's got the concussion history. You can sit out all you want to, but we saw him injury-free last season, and we're still having the discussion now. And I
also think that it is I'm not saying that they're wrong or that they don't believe this, or that it's disingenuous at all, but I think it's very easy for a retired former player to just say, hey, man, it's not worth it. You need to retire. I think it's a lot going to be a lot more difficult for Tua to either come to grips with that fact or continue to play. Even the decision to continue to play is a tough one now.
No doubt, man.
So,
and you just signed that big contract.
I'm always so reluctant, especially when it comes to an athlete. Coaches, I'm quicker to say, hey, man, it's time to hang it up. You should probably retire and go do television or something else. I don't ever want to be the person that's trying to tell the highest level of athletes, hey, man, you've been paid a lot of money. You've played at a high level for your whole life. It's time to hang it up, though. You need to retire. I'm uncomfortable saying that to anyone. And I'm not someone I'm sure I've suffered a concussion along the way that's not been diagnosed playing sports in life, but I'm not someone who suffered multiple concussions like that can speak to that experience. So I'm not going to sit here and tell Tua what to do. I'll just say what everyone is saying after watching that last night. It's difficult to watch. It really is difficult to see. And the last thing anybody wants to see, Hutton, is him go back out there without a guardian cap, without any changes to any rules or protocols, and him trying to get another 4th down a year from now, 8 weeks from now, a year and a half from now, and see him take a hit like that again and see him fencing on the ground for a 4th time and a 4th concussion.
And what
no one wants to see that.
And what we saw was the collision between Damar Hamlin and Tua Tagovailoa, and the prime examples, the 2 examples that I can think of watching the brutal honesty of the sport. That's the NFL's also looking at that too. Chad, at what point you talking about someone steps in and says stuff about what's the message to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs football program? Another arrest, this time Daniel Harris, defensive back. He's charged with reckless driving, among other charges, which driving an unregistered vehicle. 4 other players have been arrested in recent months with similar charges. Here we go again. It's always just a matter of time before we see the next one. We had the topic, what was it, July, June? If Georgia would have another arrest prior to camp starting, I said yes. And we're not even a month into the season, and here's another one. This isn't stopping. Who steps in to stop whatever issues are going on from the top down? Because whatever message they're sending is not getting through.
It's clear that whatever the deterrent is from Kirby Smart is not heavy-handed enough with these players. There's not even remotely close to any reason for these players to not do this right now based on what Kirby Smart has done to them. I would have 3 or 4 incidents ago just said blanket rule. Any speeding violation, any reckless driving, anytime you don't have your license, anything happening in Athens, Georgia, on these roads around campus, and you are found guilty of it, charged with it, whatever, you're gone. I don't care if you're Carson Beck, the starting quarterback. I don't care if you're the 4th string, walk-on, whatever. You were off this team. That's how serious I am about it. And just see if that stops it. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. How do I not know? Because Kirby Smart didn't do any of that. Because this guy's not off the team, and I doubt he's going to be off the team. So he's not done enough to stop this. Now, flip side of that, and this is something I'm sure Kirby Smart, if we gave him true serum like Hutton did all the teams in college football last week, he'd probably tell you this. It's tough for coaches to be the bad guy anymore in college football. Because 10 years ago, you'd say, you want to F around, you're going to find out. And I'm going to kick your ass off the team, and good luck playing at West Alabama next year. Good luck going to Florida A&M and finishing out your career. Now these dudes know, I got a reckless driving. Okay, I'll go start at Texas next year. I'll go play for your rival. There's no deterrent with these guys because they're going to get paid, especially the ones at Georgia. That's the best team in America. Every player on their roster knows they could go play meaningful snaps and get money anywhere else in America. So, yes, there is an allure of being a Georgia and competing for national titles and all that, but Hutton, I don't think coaches have the same ability as they did when we talk about kicking someone off a team. Because kicking someone off the team was you got to go play at a lower level for a year before and then work your way back up to another roster. And then, by the way, I will badmouth you to everyone that I know in coaching, and I'm sure somebody's going to take a chance on a talent, but you're not going to be at this level ever again. This guy gets kicked off the team. He might go to Ohio State and start next year.
Yeah.
And be just fine, and Kirby Smart knows that, and he knows that. The player knows that.
So we'll find out his designation for the upcoming game. They're playing Georgia. Kentucky, sorry. Georgia plays Kentucky. So the SEC, because it's Georgia's first SEC matchup, they have to disclose the injury report. Suspensions have to be on that. They have to disclose this. So we'll see, and it should come out later this evening.
He's played considerable snaps in the first 2 games. He's in a sophomore year. He is a contributor on defense.
I like the point you're making about the coaches, but here's the thing. You're able, if you're a coach now, to get away with just letting it slide. Just ask Mike Gundy, who had a star running back, get a DUI. Business decision.
Oh, yeah.
No big deal.
That's a great point. And the flip
No
side
big
of that,
deal. Billy Napier.
As long as they win and they're in good when it comes to that,
Billy Napier kicked guys off, and now he's on the hot seat.
You can do whatever you want. There is no deterrent. There's no deterrent either way.
And Kirby Smart's doing this to the extreme, but I mean, Gundy just flat out told everybody the same week he had media days. Yeah, I mean, he's a great player, so yeah, we're trying to win here. That's all Kirby Smart has to point to. But
I wouldn't buy it from Kirby Smart.
Someone's got to jump in.
But similar to the way Mike Gundy came out and said about Ollie Gordon,
right?
Hey, the way college football is now, this is a business. I'm running a business here, and his punishment's going to be 38 carries in the first game of the season. We need him on the field. That's how we're going to punish him. I'm going to punish him outside of that. I owe it to everyone else within the business to not suspend him. Most people aren't going to agree with that, but at least I like him explaining it that way. If Kirby Smart took to a podium and said exactly what I just laid out and said, look, guys, I'm tired of this stuff just like everybody else. It's ridiculous. We had fatalities involved with this stuff, and that wasn't a deterrent for these guys. But if I kick, is it Daniel Harris?
Daniel, yes.
If I kick Daniel off this football team, he is going to go right down the road and start. He's going to go to Tennessee. He's going to go to Auburn. He's going to go to Alabama. He's going to go to Ohio State. He's going to start next year against me. And I don't know that he's going to learn his lesson. So I'd rather him stay within this program where I feel like he's getting some good structure, punish him internally, and continue to coach him. And also, by the way, guys, we got the best defense in America, and I've had it since I got here, and he is a contributor on this defense. And we are trying to win football games here at the University of Georgia. So I'm keeping him on this team. I don't know that I would completely agree with that, and he would look like someone who's allowing this stuff to slide. But Hutton, that's a pretty good explanation from a head football coach in 2024 in the current climate of football.
So many of us don't want the NFL effect on college football. We're seeing it everywhere. This is another example. Rasheed Rice is playing right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. Tyreek Hill. We could go through all the players that, Adam Pac-Man Jones. It goes way back. This is where, though, from a leadership standpoint, the future of college football can be better from this particular path. The commissioner of college football, that's what is needed here, an overall governing body to be able to, point out where things, when they go awry, where they need to, crank up the volume a bit on discipline. And, then you can mandate certain things based on where players can go and can't go. Again, this isn't stopping, and it's unfortunate that,
And it all stems from bad leadership from the NCAA, too, is kind of where this is all.
Yeah.
And, yes, if you could have a commissioner of football that could rule on this.
Let the legal process play out. It's a $50 bond,
And
by
you
the
could
way.
also, then every other program say, what's going on at Georgia is ridiculous because coaches have let talented players slide for any number of issues since the start of football, since the start of college football in America. That's not new. But having this many incidents that are very similar in scope, that is unique to Georgia right now. There's no one else in America that's having any type of repeat offender status, right? Oklahoma State didn't have 15 other players hit their pregnant girlfriend like Tyreek Hill did after he left in short order. Georgia has deaths because of their vehicles and how they're driving. And how they've responded to that is to continue to rack up reckless driving charges in the months following that.
Georgia settled that case.
This is very, very unique. And if you had good leadership, if a Nick Saban was the commissioner of college football, that leader would step up and say, this guy is suspended for the rest of the year. Or this is how we're going to levy punishment to your program if there's any more offenses like this. Because this is now absurd. We've reached the point of absurdity with Georgia football. And I'll tell you who cares the least about it right now? Georgia Bulldog fans. Not until they lose. Let's see how they do against Texas. Coming up soon. Let's see. They're probably going to, I think they're going to cover against Kentucky, minus 22.5 on the road. They're going to blow out Kentucky. Let's see if they start losing. And if they start losing, that is when they'll care. And they won't care until then.
Yep. Chad, do we care that the Pac-12 is adding some teams again? The Pac-2, sorry. The Pac-2. We just mentioned the Commissioner of College Football, possibly a super conference. In what is a play to be included into an automatic berth into the college football playoff. I look at this and look at some of these schools and go, too little, too late. The programs that no one else wanted to add, you're now adding and saying that we're back. Okay. I think it's you're more of the same, unfortunately, for them.
Hutton, at the risk of contradicting myself earlier when I said I'm very uncomfortable telling an athlete to retire or when to call it quits, I will tell it to a coach. Here's another exemption for me. I'll tell it to a conference, too, when it's time for you to just go away and die. It's time for the Pac-12 to take the death that they were delivered before. There's no resurrection here. There's no need for it. I am a huge fan of the Pac-12. I was a huge fan of the Pac-8 and the Pac-10 before that. It is a long-standing conference, and I like tradition in college sports. So I've always liked the Pac-12. I hate that they had to die, but they did, in fact, die. So it's one thing to die. It's another thing to know when you're dead. The Pac-12 died. They are dead. They don't know it, though, because they're trying to come back to life with what some are calling the six-pack. Now, they have 6 schools, and you're going to see them right here. Colorado State and Fresno State, San Diego State, and Boise State are joining Oregon State and Washington State. This is not a good conference. And if you go down and look at their other options that are out there, if you look in the American Athletic Conference, if you look in others, I'm trying to find even the ones that make a little bit of sense. I'm coming up with Wyoming and Hawaii.
UNLV.
And if you want to completely go away from anything geographical like the rest of the conference have, Memphis. Memphis is the belle of the ball right now.
Yeah.
That's probably the best program that's out there that they could take, and it makes no sense geographically to bring in Memphis to this, whatever this is going to be called, the six-pack or whatever it is. The Southwest Conference, they were high on the hog for years and years, pun intended, because Arkansas was, in fact, a member of the old Southwest Conference. 82 years that conference existed. From 1914 to 1996, there was a Southwest Conference. Fans of schools in that conference, which was all Texas schools and Arkansas, they thought it would never die. But it died in part because they were doing NIL before anyone knew what NIL meant. Because SMU was paying guys. Because every school in that conference was paying players, Texas included, and a lot of them got caught. And slowly but surely it went away because of bad leadership, because of scandal with SMU and the Pony Express getting the death penalty. And then eventually they merged with the Big 8 and they formed the Big 12. And that does end the Southwest Conference. But what the Southwest Conference had the ability to do, and I give them credit for this, was know when they're dead. No resurrection. No more Southwest Conference attempts. Southwest Conference doesn't exist today, just like the Pac-12, Hutton, should not exist today. At least the Southwest Conference had the dignity to die like a dog when it was time. Please, Pac-12, do the same, because this is not going to work. Although, add Gonzaga for basketball. If you want to actually have some credibility in some way for basketball, you go and add. That's the one piece that gives you some credibility from a basketball perspective.
That means they're going to the Big 12.
Yeah, like UConn.
Yeah, like UConn.
Like
exactly.
UConn going to the Big 12.
Before we get to Dumpster Fire of the Week, Chad, Northern Illinois, they downed Notre Dame. And Coach Thomas Hammock.
I love this guy.
Yeah, he gets with Marcus Freeman and, shares what he found out about Notre Dame and how to beat them. But Trey Wallace had Coach Hammock on his podcast. Check out the Trey Wallace podcast at OutKick.com right now. And, Hammock says he's not going to share this information with future opponents of Notre Dame.
For folks out there that are watching this and listening to this, schools will sometimes, if they don't play each other in the future, they will call each other and say, "Hey man, what did you see? What did I get wrong here? Is there something that stood out to you that could help us in the future?" And some schools are for it, some schools are not. If they got to play each other 3 or 4 years down the road, you were kind of in a safe spot when it comes to Notre Dame. The conversation with Marcus Freeman in having that, was that something where you reached out to the coach from Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, to maybe lend that hand to maybe help him out for the season? How did that whole thing go?
Well, I know as a head coach, what happens when you play an opponent and then the opponent you play next week, they call in the opponent you just played to get information. Hey, what did you see? What signals do you have? And so I wanted to reach out to him in a different respect to say, listen, I'm not going to give another opponent that you play any information. But if you wanted some information that we had, or some tendencies that we may have had, I want to give them to you because I want to see you be successful. He treated me so well in the pregame. He treated me so well postgame that I gained a tremendous amount of respect for him as a person and as a man. And obviously, he's the head coach at Notre Dame, which is phenomenal. And I wanted to give him that opportunity to say, listen, I'm not going to share any information with anybody that you play. But if you want to take advantage and you want to talk, because when you become a head coach, there's a lot of things that's involved that's, you can't control everything, and sometimes you don't know who to trust. Sometimes, so I just I just wanted to make sure that I really respected him, and I wanted him to know that I respected him, and I wanted to try to help him out any way possible if he wanted it at that point in time. I felt like that was the right thing to do for a guy that treated me, because he could have been like, I'm the head coach of Notre Dame. I don't need to talk to you. You are beneath me. And he didn't. He did the opposite. And so I felt that energy. And when I felt that energy, I was like, the right thing to do is to, maybe give them a couple things that we saw or tried to attack and see if they can, offset those tendencies.
Yeah, well said there. And by the way, Eddie George would echo that when they opened up last season at Notre Dame and the efforts that Notre Dame flew in a crew to assess where TSU needed help.
Yeah, not as a program.
Not just with the program, though, like just as a campus.
Yeah.
They did that twice. They flew in twice.
I love stories like this. Very cool of Thomas Hammock, and also really cool of Marcus Freeman in a difficult moment in time where you're reeling. I mean, people are questioning your job in your own fan base, and you lose a game like that, to be a big enough person to say, yeah, I'll absolutely hear you out. Let's talk about what you saw. I think it's really smart of him.